Yes, so I'm going to take you through a video walkthrough now where I'm going to take you through the various tabs on the PLP and hopefully give you just a bit of a guided tour for when you get to have a look at your own. Okay, so here we are on the landing page of your PLP workbook, and you'll know that you're in the right place because you'll have these 6 tabs across the top that I'm going to take you through one at a time. Before I do that, just to note, you've got the save button there, which you're going to want to use regularly. It will give you prompts to do that, but it's always wise to on a regular basis hit save. So starting off with the professional documentation tab. Now you can see that I've got a drop-down menu here that begins with your profile. You are encouraged to do this before you start CP1. It's got some basic details about who you are, your personal tutor on the course, your course details, etc. And then for the benefit of your school colleagues in particular, it asks you to give some brief details, almost like a CV or your application to the PGCE programme that gives an indication of your qualifications, a summary of your work experience and your hobbies and interests. And this can be quite useful to schools because they will be quite keen to have you get involved in extracurricular activity. So if you've got any particular hobbies and interests that perhaps they don't have a club running for in the school at this point, it'll be useful for schools to know that at the start of your clinical practice placements. So that's pretty straightforward and something to prioritise before induction is over. Then you've got another sub-menu item there entitled documentation. Now, as you can imagine, on this programme there are lots of different forms that we ask you to complete, and this is a bit of a repository really for all of those forms. And some of these forms already you will have been set to complete, and you can see now that we've got a place here on the PLP for you to upload them. Some of them you won't have immediately in this early stage in the programme, but they will accumulate as you progress through the PGCE year. So you can see that we've got a place for you to upload your timetables on clinical practice, your health and safety essential documentation, the Cardiff Partnership Code of Conduct, and various other forms that you will be provided either from the university or there might be a couple of things that you are able to get via school that you will then upload here. So you've even got a bit for sort of miscellaneous documents there as you go through the programme. Pretty simple. And then the final aspect of the professional documentation tab is your attendance record. Now this is absolutely crucial to stay on top of because it's a statutory requirement on the PGCE programme that in order to gain qualified teacher status, you must complete 120 days on placement, on clinical practice. So this is a record of your attendance that you will maintain. You can see that it follows the PGCE week, so it starts right at the beginning in week 1 of the programme, the first week of induction, and you've got space in there to log your attendance, a little bit of guidance of how to do that, and also space to note any absences and any reasons for those absences as you go through the programme. So you've got it all there, and it's good to stay on top of that weekly. Then we come to the mentor meetings tab. Now, mentor meetings will happen on a weekly basis. You've got some general guidance in this drop-down menu for this tab here, but importantly, there is a link that you need to click in order to access the mentor meeting template. And this template gives you some really specific guidance for how to frame your weekly mentor meetings. This will be of benefit to you and to your mentor to go through that framework and to fill in the sections accordingly. Now I'm going to talk about this in detail a little bit later in this session, so I'm not going to dwell on this now, but the only other thing to say about this drop-down menu here is that we've got a place where all of the completed meetings will be pulled together. Now, important sort of pit stop here, you'll notice that we've got a toggle and a prompt via the text here to hit the toggle button to switch it on. I'm going to do that now, and then all of your mentor meetings, everything that you've completed whilst on CP1 and CP2, all of those mentor meetings will populate underneath there. So it's important that every time you see a toggle, anywhere and everywhere you see a toggle on your PLP, switch it on ASAP, get that done straight away. So moving on then to the assessment tab. Now, you've already had a session on assessment of student teachers on clinical practice. So a number of things that we mentioned in that session, you'll notice are duplicated here on the PLP. So you've got 3 tabs. You've got your synthesis of progress. Now, your synthesis of progress is something that we're going to give you a whole extra session and set of guidance on. So I'm not going to dwell on it too much, but just note that you've got a section here where you will be reflecting at 4 points in the year, we call those key assessment points, on your major strengths and your areas for development in your progress towards the QTS standards or QTS descriptors of the professional standards for teaching and leadership. So not too much to say at this stage on your synthesis of progress, but that's where you'll complete it on the PLP when the time comes. You will have regular formal learning and teaching observations made of your teaching. We talked about that in the assessment of clinical practice session that you've had. And they will be completed, there are 7 of them, as you can see in this drop-down menu here, throughout the PGCE year, and they will be completed by your mentor. So you'll notice that there are some aspects of the forms on the PLP that you are not able to edit yourself. And the observation forms are one aspect of the PLP where it'll just be your mentor who will have access to this area, and they will complete those lesson observation forms directly onto your PLP. Of course, the beauty of that is you've got that really important formal feedback all pulled together in one place on your PLP. So once those are done, you'll be able to refer back to them, and you'll see your development as you go through the year. I'm not going to go into the detail of those learning and teaching observation forms because we covered those quite a bit in the assessment of student teachers on clinical practice session. We also mentioned that you will have 4 progress reviews that will happen, 2 per clinical practice, and that's where you and your mentor will be reflecting, you'll be self-assessing, and your mentor will be assessing your holistic progress towards the professional standards for teaching and leadership, particularly the QTS descriptors. So all of those progress reviews will also be completed on the PLP. Now, there's guidance there for mentors on how to complete them, but those various different bits of guidance will also be of use to you because you will be self-assessing your progress towards the professional standards for teaching and leadership when it comes to progress reviews. Now, again, I am not going to go into too much depth and detail here about how to do this, how to self-evaluate and how to complete your sections of the progress review forms on the PLP, because we've got another session on that to come in the future. But just note that what that essentially means that is in this assessment tab of the PLP, you will have all of that important information which is tracking and monitoring your progress as you go through the PGCE year. So moving on to arguably one of the most important tabs of your PLP, one that you will certainly frequent most frequently during clinical practice, is the planning and evaluation tab. Now, much like the mentor meetings tab, you can see that you've got a little bit of opening guidance about the learning and teaching evaluation streams that you will complete as you go through clinical practice, and a link to the template that you will complete every time you start a new sequence of lessons. Now, there are differences between primary and secondary about how you will use these sequences of lessons, and you will get a lot of guidance and information about how to plan lessons, looking at the minutiae of it and how to evaluate those lessons to make sure that what you intended in your lesson plan actually came to pass in terms of the pupil's progress against those learning intentions. So I'm not going to talk to you in depth and detail now about how to plan lessons, but I will show you, if I click on this link here, what you will see when you start to plan a new sequence of lessons. Now, for each of our sequences of lessons on the PLP, when you're planning on the PLP, you'll not have a sort of single file for each single lesson planned. For each stream of lessons, so let's say, for example, you're doing a sequence of lessons on a particular topic or theme, you will have all of those lessons associated with that particular topic or theme in one stream. Now, for each class that we teach, or for each individual group of learners, we've got a lot of sort of information that remains the same, that's kind of static, that we know at the start. So you've got a bit of a fixed part of the learning and teaching plan, and that information you will really only have to fill in once. And so that's details such as the class that you're working with, the particular topic pertaining to this sequence of lessons, the aim of that overall sequence of lessons, and various other bits that will remain the same. Now, the things that you'll fill in lesson by lesson are the lesson plan. So you can see that we've got a date and time here for the lesson plan, the learning intentions, etc. And then what you will do in your lesson plans, the plan itself, and then the evaluation of that lesson. And you can see if I scroll down, immediately after the evaluation of lesson 1, I've got lesson 2. Now that seems like a really obvious and a simple detail that the PLP facilitates. But why that's important is that immediately after you've evaluated your lesson, it's a really good idea to spend a few minutes thinking, so what does that mean for next lesson, for the next lesson that I plan with these learners? What will my learning intentions be now that I've evaluated the progress that was made in the previous lesson? So by working the lesson plans and evaluations in a stream like this on the PLP, it's hopefully going to help create that joined up thinking from planning, from teaching, from evaluating to then reflecting and planning on for the next lesson. So the only other thing to say about the planning and evaluation tab on the PLP is that, again, for every sequence of lessons that you plan, you've got a toggle here, and all of the collection of every sequence of lessons that you plan will be populated underneath in this collection area of the tab. Now you can see that there's one I made earlier there entitled Year 7 Exploring and Interpreting Text for Drama. Because I've switched on my toggle, that's saved underneath in this collection area. So that's all I'm going to say now about planning and evaluation. You will get more on this to come in future. You may have already had some input on lesson planning already. Okay, moving on to the Research and Inquiry Log tab. Now, this is where you will complete and where you will also upload both bespoke and prescribed research and inquiry tasks. Now, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, then you maybe need to go back and look at our introduction to clinical practice. We talked about those a lot, but another place that you'll find information about research and inquiry tasks is in the Research and Inquiry Explained appendix of the Clinical Practice Guide. So if you were going to be doing some bespoke research and inquiry, which might lead to doing some reflection on your practice, it is here that you will find the reflective model templates. So in the first few weeks, when you're in the observation period on clinical practice 1 and 2, you're expected to complete one reflection, one formal reflection of a lesson observation that you've done that week. And we ask you to do that on the Driscoll model. So let's just dip into the Driscoll model, and you can see that you can give it a title, and then you can edit it and you can complete it, and you've got some guidance in this template that will guide you through your reflection, whether it be a reflection of a lesson that you taught or one that you observed. So again, the prompt to save every time you do that, and again in this tab you've got anything that you completed that will accumulate if you click the toggle underneath. So anything that you've tagged as reflection, so any prescribed tasks that you were asked to do on an SLT day, you will tag those as reflection and they will populate in your research and inquiry log. If you complete a reflective model template, as I just showed you, you'll save it, and again, that will instantly, if you switch on the toggle, appear in your collection of your completed templates. So that's your research and inquiry log. Again, lots of input on how you will use research and inquiry, so not too much more on that now. Just to the final tab now on the PLP, which is your personal skills tab. So this is quite a simple tab, but it's an important one because it's here that you will upload the results, the marked papers for your audits that you do on the programme. So you will do your literacy and numeracy audits. You may by now have already done audit 1. You will do a digital competency audit. You will also be expected to complete tasks which help you develop your Welsh language. Again, you may already have had input from your Welsh language tutors about what you need to do in that area of the personal skills tab, so I'm not going to say too much about that now. And then also for the secondary programme, you will be completing prescribed research and inquiry tasks that are specific to subject, and you might be asked to do a subject knowledge audit. So anything that you're doing to improve your subject knowledge, you'll be adding to that personal skills tab area. So really, the only other thing to say is that you've got the I want to button here, which allows you to print. So you may have been thinking, well, what do I do if I want to, show any of these aspects to my mentor? Well, for a start off, your mentor will be linked to your PLP. So as we said at the start, you'll be able to collaborate, they'll be able to see, they'll be able to add in some bits that they need to complete on your PLP. But also sometimes we like to print aspects of our PLP, and you are able to do that through the I want to button. And the final thing to say is that you really can't break this. It may seem a little bit overwhelming at the moment, but it will make sense as you go through the programme, as Sean had said at the start. So as soon as you've got access to it, have a little play with it, have a look around it, try and orientate yourself with it, and have fun using it to demonstrate how you are moving forward in your practice throughout this PGCE year.